Greetings. This is Ty Brown with Athletic Director U. I am joined by Isaiah Swann, who is a former baseball player at UT Dallas, currently in medical school, and Megan Cook, former track and cross-country runner at Colorado College. Greetings. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Now, you guys have to help me out here. You guys are both involved with the NCAA, right? Tell me what your role with the NCAA is.
So I am currently the Division III National Student Athlete Advisory Committee Chair, outgoing for the 2023 year.
Okay, excellent. And you?
And I'm the D3 representative to the NCAA Board of Governors.
Okay. So you guys have been involved in a lot of conversations when you talk about leadership, transformation, and all those key buzz terms that us in college athletics hear, right? What I want to talk to you guys about is specifically the when you think about being someone who plays a sport, there is this aspect of understanding who I am versus what I do, right? And now that you guys have transitioned to a point where you've graduated, you're in medical school, and we're no longer competing in eligibility on campus, that comes to the forefront in terms of who I am versus what I do. And there are a lot of people who struggle with that as they no longer play, right? So I wonder if you guys have thoughts on that, being as it was relatively recent for you guys to stop playing, in terms of how to manage your life now, right? And we'll start here with you, Mike.
Definitely. I think that the transition from being an actively playing student athlete to a former student athlete is definitely kind of like jumping over a cliff. Many student athletes start playing sports at, 4 or 5 years old. And if you play it through college, I mean, that's through major developmental landmarks in your life. And I think that you hit it right on the head, that really develops a sense of identity within this student athlete persona, kind of. And whenever your identity is tied to that and suddenly you retire, and I used to laugh at the term retirement, but that's really what it is. You are closing this chapter of your life. And I did that, about 6 months ago, and it was one of the scariest things I've ever done. But I think that it's really made me appreciate and look back on the time that I had very fondly and really try to understand what was it about being an athlete that I so loved. And it was the structure. It was more than anything else, the people, my teammates, my coaches, those mentors, just people that really cared about what they were doing. And I think on top of all of that, having a space where I was able to be competitive, to have fun, to really express myself and put my all into, that's what sports was for me. So even though I'm not a track and cross country runner anymore and I have no plans to go pro, I can look for activities in my life now that kind of mirror some of those things. And that's how how I'm trying to make sure that I feel fulfilled in those parts of my life. Because otherwise it's just such a major shift.
Yeah. As a thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think Megan hit it right on the head. That was definitely something that I struggled with as well. I had a little bit of practice almost in undergrad because I had a season-ending injury my junior year, and that was kind of my first taste of what the post-sports life was like. Being away from sport for 8 or so weeks, going through surgeries and stuff, not being able to really be on the field with my team, even though I was at practices and stuff. I think that really kind of challenged me as far as who I am, outside of athletics. And I had to kind of figure that out. I felt like I was floundering for a bit because I'd never, I assumed that I was just a person outside of athletics, but it's hard. It's hard when you have that kind of challenge to your identity. And so I really had to kind of lean on my network outside. I talked to my parents a lot, just literally just asking, who am I to you, right? Like what am I like when I'm not playing baseball? I think that that's really important, being able to lean on the people that you have outside of athletics. That was kind of a big thing.
That's actually pretty significant. Let's unpack that a little bit. You actually talk to your parents and said, who am I to you and what am I like now? That is interesting, right?
Yeah.
If you don't mind sharing, how did they respond to those questions?
Yeah. I think it's one of those things where when you're growing up, you kind of, my parents are special, of course, but I think a lot of parents will kind of try to drop knowledge on you here and there. They'll tell you little things about yourself, when you're back home for the holidays, on breaks, whatever. And so I really wanted to kind of dive into that a bit and just, talk about like what other identities I have, right? And for me, being in med school now, a lot of it had to do with academics, and that's kind of a separate conversation, but very similar themes, right? Like, who am I outside of academics? And you kind of keep going down that path until you hit a spot where you're like, okay, I am a collection of the things that I am passionate about, right? And for me, of course, that was athletics, academics, but it's also music, right? It's being with friends, it's helping people, being in the community. And so that was one thing. I don't know, it was like a huge learning experience for me, and I was able to start really delving into those other aspects of my life as well, and I think become a much more well-rounded person when I stopped having such a great emphasis and pressure on just athletics or just academics.
Yeah, that's interesting. And they probably, being in tune with their son, you asking those questions, they probably could tell, like, okay, he's there's some things he's working through right now, and so let's time. That's actually excellent right there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really grateful for them. I think.
Well, even for you to ask the question, right? You know what I mean? There's a level of self-awareness that not a lot of us athletes or former athletes have, to ask the people close to us, who am I to you, right? Who have I been without this sport? Because I'm trying to figure this thing out. I think that's pretty self-aware. 6 months ago, right? It's only been 6 months. And so one of the things that I found that great leaders have is a sense of self-awareness, and they use introspection to kind of help figure out who they are in this chapter of my life, in this situation, etc. What questions have you asked yourself over the last 6 months as you have separated from competing in college with sport that are relative to you moving on or retiring, as the word you use, from college athletics?
I think that, introspection, it's incredibly scary, but I also, I was trained as a runner, and that means a lot of time in your own head with your own thoughts. So I think that was a lot of good practice in terms of those inner dialogues. But some of the questions I started asking myself were related to what achievements was I most proud of, and what was at the root of that, and frankly, it's not the races where I placed the highest. It's not, the best time I ever had. But it's the moments that, had the most impact on me. It's the Special Olympics events we were able to host with our college. It's the locker room memories with my teammates, right? All of those small in-between personal connection moments. And trying to figure out how I can use that to actually propel, the rest of my life. I'm also interested in going into medicine and people and helping people, especially when they're in, an incredibly vulnerable position and really need assistance from someone who's well-trained in their fields. That's a space I want to go into. And I think looking back at sports, it makes sense with why that is, so connected. So I think in asking, who am I, I've found a lot of motivation, and frankly, it's pulled me out of a lot of the really emotional. I think it can be like an emotional spiral when you're like, oh my goodness, I'm not this thing I was anymore. I don't have this schedule and this structure and so much of my identity. To not ask yourself, who are you, but who do you have the potential to become? And how do you look at like your core values and morals and passions, and really figure out the way that you can build your life towards that? Because, I can't just decide tomorrow I want to be a doctor and go start practicing. There's obviously a lot of steps to get there. But it's similar that I didn't just become a collegiate athlete because one day I decided that's, what I was going to do. It took years of hard work to get there, and I built myself up to that. And, that's, I think, one of the greatest lessons that sports has ever given me. But an earlier comment just related to Isaiah's season-ending injury that gave him that preview into what post-sports life was like. So many student athletes got that preview during COVID. And so it's really interesting because we have a generation of athletes right now that are moving through collegiate athletics, and they had this pause that, if used, I think, in a very intentional, reflective way, you can kind of prepare for what's coming next, because so many student athletes saw why it was so meaningful to them to have athletics, and they saw, when it's taken all away in a second, when your season ends, suddenly you have this gap. And if you really use that to start to reflect, I think it can really be a way to be intentional with the time you have. And then hopefully, as you start to move on to the rest of your life, it doesn't have to become this huge cliff you jump off of and, really spiral before you kind of find your footing on.
So here's a question I have for you. And it's a question I've asked current student athletes at a program I was doing with the NCAA. And it was, tell me about yourself. Don't use the word sport. Don't use the word competition, athletics, or any sport that you played in, right? So I want to ask you guys those questions, because you have had to think about that now that you are no longer competing. So for you, tell me about yourself without using sports, the word sports, without using track, without using anything, right?
Yeah. So I would say, if I had to talk about myself, I think I would say that I am someone who thrives in the company of people who I feel I care about and care about my presence being there. I am an extremely extroverted person, but I love talking to a wide range of people and meeting a wide range of people. But at the end of the day, what brings me recharge is my support system, a really strong, select few group of people. And I think having empathy towards those people and being a caring person who's in touch, and I pride myself on hopefully being in touch with people and their emotions and how they're conveying different things to me. Obviously, it's a skill you can always practice, but I think I try and I strive to be the most empathetic person I can be. I strive to be someone who's better each day than they were the day before. And I'm really just driven by like that human connection piece of, there's a lot of scary bad things going on in the world. And I think the only place where we can get kind of the hope, or that I get hope for the future, is really in looking in others and the kindness and things that they can bring.
People are important to you,
People
right?
are important.
Yeah, 100%. Isaiah, when you talk about the question, tell me about yourself, but don't mention the sport, don't mention competition, don't mention any of those things.
Yeah. I would say that I'm a driven and curious person who ultimately is really passionate about building bridges between communities and between people. That's kind of what has defined my entire life. All of the friends that I've made in the various cities, states that I've lived in, I find a way to make them friends,
Right.
or at least to know each other, which is, that's something that I'm really passionate about. I think that we all have lessons to teach each other. We're all different, but we all have commonalities, but we can learn where the differences lie. So.
Yeah, which is excellent. Those are excellent answers. I want to talk about finding purpose, right? You mentioned core values. I'll give you a story. When I freshman year, I went to Michigan State, and my father at the time he was battling cancer, throat cancer, dying from cancer, whatever. And I tried out for the football team that spring and didn't make it. So I called home to my mom, like, they don't want me on the team. I'm out. I'm gonna transfer. It's time to go. So she said, you need to talk to your father. So Pops got on the phone. He said, what's this? I hear about you leaving. And I told him they didn't want me on the team, so I don't want to be at Michigan State. So I'm gonna come home this summer. In the fall, I'm gonna go somewhere else. He said, you're gonna enroll in your fall courses, and you're gonna go back to Michigan State, because we didn't send you there to play football. We sent you there to bring home a piece of paper, right? Talking about the degree. What that did at that point was help me realize the difference between purpose and goals, right? My purpose for being at Michigan State was to get a degree. One of the goals I wanted to accomplish was to walk on the football team, right? So I went back, tried out again, got on the football team, et cetera, got a scholarship, all those things. I bring that to you to say, and it took me 10 more years to figure out my purpose in life, right? To figure out, why am I here? So I bring that to you guys to say, have you guys thought about those types of things, purpose and core values in terms of who you are, how you make decisions, what are your founding principles? If so, would you mind sharing some of those things with us?
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for sharing, and I'm so sorry to hear about your father's experience with throat cancer.
25 years ago.
Medical field related, so I think that empathy towards everyone sharing experience or sharing experiences with medical things is important. I don't know if you want to start. You want me to?
Yeah, I can start. So related to purpose, that's something that I stress for everyone, especially my mentees, the people I talk to. I think in a field that is very difficult training environment, like medicine especially, it's important to have that purpose, to have that why that drives you every single day, because that is ultimately when you're studying 10 hours a day to take the biggest exam of your life, that is ultimately what is going to get you there to that end goal. And so for me, it's kind of like, in the statement that I delivered a couple of minutes ago, that I had to do a lot of introspection to get to that point, related to, just things that had happened earlier in my life that, caused me to question, like, why am I here? What am I doing? That sort of thing. Those kind of experiences, I think, while they can be unfortunate at times, I think, there lies an opportunity in there for you to really kind of find that purpose. And I think that we all kind of go through those challenges, and it can be, at the moment, it can be really difficult to make it through, but I think it's important that we reflect on them when we have time, and that's where we really find our purpose. We find, what was I brought here to do? And for me, I think that that's bringing people together, toward a common goal or something like that.
Did you seek outside, as you were trying to establish this purpose? We can be in our minds a lot, right? Did you seek outside counsel in terms of any of your friends, family, anything to help you arrive at what you now say is your purpose?
Yeah. And so, actually in the moment, I didn't, I didn't want to, rather. I think that for me, that experience, so basically, my best friend that I grew up with, he passed away, and I, for the longest time, just didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to, think about it, really. And, after I found out that information, I was like laying on my couch for like a week, I think. And I was home for the summer, just about to go off to my summer research thing. And I laid on the couch for like a week straight, I think, until I got like so sick that my parents brought me into like urgent care or something. Wow. And for me, that was, I didn't really understand, how holding everything in and not going to someone, how detrimental that can be, even to your physical health. Like I was feeling perfectly fine, and then I wasn't. And so I definitely, I think it's critical to reach out to people, reach out to your network. I think that's when your support network becomes just critical, honestly, just to your health generally, but also, to finding that purpose.
Yeah, which is interesting. What about you in terms of defining your purpose?
I think that I've definitely started to hit the ground running in terms of figuring out where my purpose is. I think that distinction between goals and purpose is something that I have definitely been trying to get over hurdles for. But I think that something that actually the NCAA has shown a lot of light on for me is that my purpose is to use the time that I have here, the platforms I'm able to build from the opportunities that I'm given or I work towards, to push things in a positive direction for as many people as I can. And whether that's, the voice of the Division III student athletes, pushing it to try and get more equitable experiences, better health and safety things, all of these initiatives forward, trying to represent, the 200,000 student athletes I stand to represent in the best way possible, but just striving for that, building a platform and speaking from it and, trying to push things in a direction. Because as I mentioned before, I think there's just so many difficult things going on in the world in the bigger picture. And then, we think about the individual things we might struggle with every day, the mental health things, I lost 2 family members within the last year. And that was this incredible moment where you're facing your own mortality and you're facing grief and all of these overwhelming waves. And I think whenever we have people in our lives that we know we can go to and be a voice of comfort, a voice of support. So whether it's, speaking up on a podium and advocating for things, or, speaking in a hushed room with a friend who's going through a difficult time, using my voice to help people, to ground them, to bring them comfort or peace or push things forward that are helping people in general. I think that is a purpose I would just love to continue to fulfill. Is it my ultimate purpose in life? I would like to think there's so much more I don't know about what's going to happen in my life that maybe it's part of something bigger as well.
Yeah, I think what's excellent about that is why I haven't really uncovered or unveiled what I believe my purpose is. At least I go into each situation understanding the purpose of that situation. Right. So at some point, it will be unveiled to me what my purpose is. I'll ask this last question and we'll wrap. I have a saying, and it is that the key to a peaceful existence is to master the ability to adjust accordingly, right? In life, you adjust to whatever life deals with you. And everybody is not like attuned to how to adjust to what life is dealing with them. And sometimes things are just real big, and you have to realize that the adjustment period could be 10 years, right? It could be a month, it could be a day, 20 minutes, it could be 15 years. So I wonder about adjusting to life, right? Which you guys are doing, which we're all doing. If you guys have any final words in terms of adjusting accordingly to what life deals with you, if there are any student athletes who will be watching, or I know for sure there's going to be college administrators who work in college athletics who will be watching, that adjust accordingly, which is a point of life, which you guys are doing and which we all experience at some point. Start here.
Yeah. something that I learned in the last year is that, we hear all the time about multitasking. It turns out that the brain, especially, for example, people like me who have ADHD, like the brain is not really good at multitasking. Even though we emphasize multitasking. Something that was shared with me that was really helpful is that, we're not actually multitasking, we are shifting priorities. And you have to learn how to shift priorities to be good at multitasking. That's what's most important. So I think recognizing, when it's time to shift slightly, to accommodate, to adjust. I think that's kind of the most important part of multitasking and being successful.
Right, that
in
adjustment,
making those,
adjusting priorities when it's important, right?
Absolutely.
And understanding when you got to adjust priorities.
Right.
Excellent. With you, Megan.
I mean, I think incredibly true words. One thing that I would say is that I think one of the most important things when you're adjusting to a major change in life is being kind to yourself. And as you mentioned, we often cannot foresee how long an adjustment period is going to take, especially in like a mental, emotional way. I mean, you can tell how long it's going to take you to move to a new house, like logistically how long the truck's going to be there, but you have no idea how long it's going to take until that space feels like yours, until it feels like a home base that's comfortable. I mean, that happened when I moved across the country. It took 5 months and I didn't even realize it before that felt like a place I could be myself. And I think that if we are so harsh on ourselves, as student athletes often are, because we expect to be good and perform at a high level in the things that we're doing, we want to be performing as many people are, but I think especially with the way sports culture praises that. It's really important to remember that as you're adjusting to these things, you're going to make mistakes. There's going to be things that work and there's going to be things that don't work. And it's okay to, at the end of the day, say, yep, today was a step in the wrong direction. And you know what? I'm going to take the time to learn from it. I'm going to decompress. And tomorrow's a new day. I'm starting over. And then as you continue to adjust, because again, it is a tactic that we learn as athletes, that's a tool set that you can really apply to many different scenarios in your life. It's just figuring out how to take the lessons you've learned before, apply them to a new situation, and ultimately live a life that every day you're excited to wake up and live. So just be kind to yourself, and every day, whether it's a step in the right direction or the wrong direction, it's a step forward. So,
well, this has been an excellent conversation, and we really appreciate you joining us here on Athletic Director U.
Of course. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
That was Megan Cook. She is the outgoing D3 SAAC chair, and Isaiah Swann. Isaiah is on the Division III Board of Governors. And of course, I am Ty Brown with Athletic Director U. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today.